A crowded, upscale restaurant filled with the wealthy elite, where conversations flow as freely as the expensive wine. Among the bustling servers is Emma, a quiet waitress with calloused hands and big dreams, a young woman whose passion for the piano is matched only by her struggle to make ends meet. Enter Richard, a self-assured millionaire, the kind who enjoys flaunting his wealth and belittling those he considers beneath him. One evening, he spots Emma, overhearing her mention her love for music. With a smug grin, he makes a show of doubting her talent, loudly mocking her in front of the entire room. But what happens next leaves the crowd stunned, silencing their whispers and forever changing how they see her. This is the story of how Emma turned humiliation into triumph and taught Richard a lesson he'd never forget. LaBelle's Bistro wasn't just a restaurant, it was a symbol of elegance in the heart of Atlanta, Georgia. Crystal chandeliers bathed the dining room in a warm, golden light, reflecting off polished silverware and pristine white tablecloths. The soft notes of jazz floated through the air, played by a pianist stationed in the corner, adding to the sophisticated ambience. The quiet hum of conversation and the occasional clinking of glasses completed the scene. This was a place where the city's elite gathered, business tycoons, socialites, and celebrities mingled effortlessly. For Emma, LaBelle's Bistro was a different world. At 24, she worked tirelessly as a waitress, weaving between tables with a practiced smile and an unwavering determination. But beneath her crisp uniform and calm demeanor was a young woman carrying the weight of unfulfilled dreams. Emma had grown up in a modest home in South Carolina, raised by her mother, Grace, a dedicated nurse who often worked double shifts to provide for them. Despite their struggles, Grace always encouraged Emma's love for music. It was on an old, slightly out-of-tune keyboard, a second-hand find, that Emma discovered her passion for the piano. Every spare moment of her childhood had been spent practicing. She'd lose herself in the melodies, imagining herself one day performing on a grand piano before an enraptured audience. But life had other plans. Financial hardships meant Emma had to set her dreams aside to help make ends meet. Instead of pursuing music, she found herself in Atlanta, waiting tables to pay rent. Yet, her passion for music never wavered. Late at night, when the restaurant was quiet and the jazz pianist had left, Emma would steal moments at the bistro's grand piano, her fingers gliding over the keys as she played from memory. It was during these fleeting moments that she felt truly alive, a spark of the dream she refused to let die. Little did Emma know, her passion and resilience would soon collide with an unexpected challenge that would test her in ways she never imagined. The evening at LaBelle's Bistro was in full swing when the atmosphere shifted. The double doors swung open with a flourish, and in walked Richard Blackwood. His presence was impossible to ignore. Draped in a tailored navy suit that screamed luxury, Richard exuded an air of wealth and flamboyance. A self-made millionaire, he had built his fortune in real estate, and his name carried weight in Atlanta's elite circles. Behind him followed his entourage, three sharply dressed individuals whose laughter echoed his, though theirs felt rehearsed. They moved as though they owned the space, brushing past other diners without so much as a glance. Richard was the sun in his solar system, and they orbited around him, hanging on his every word and gesture. Richard's voice, rich and commanding, cut through the mellow jazz and hushed conversation. He strode confidently to his reserved table, flashing a smile to patrons who turned to watch his entrance. Heads turned, not out of admiration but out of curiosity, and perhaps unease. Richard's reputation preceded him. Known for his sharp tongue and arrogance, he had a talent for making his presence felt, often at the expense of others. As Emma approached his table, notepad in hand, Richard's eyes flicked over her, and a sly grin curled on his lips. "Ah, Emma," he drawled, leaning back in his chair. "A lovely name. Almost poetic. Tell me, do you have any hidden talents to match it? Perhaps you're a secret artist, or," he paused for dramatic effect, "a musician?" His entourage chuckled on cue, their laughter too perfect to be genuine. Emma's stomach tightened, but her smile didn't waver. "Good evening, Mr. Blackwood. Can I start you and your guests with some drinks?" Her voice was steady, her professionalism impeccable. Richard ignored the question, his grin widening. You know, Emma, I can always spot hidden potential. It's a gift of mine. Something tells me you've got more to offer than carrying trays. Another round of chuckles followed, but Emma held her ground. I'll be back with the drink menu, she said calmly, excusing herself. As she walked away, her heart raced. Richard's words had unsettled her, but she wouldn't give him the satisfaction of knowing it. Little did either of them know, this was just the beginning of a night neither would forget. The air in LaBelle's bistro grew heavy as Richard Blackwood decided to make Emma the center of attention. His voice, smooth but laced with arrogance, rang out above the gentle hum of jazz and conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, he called, raising his glass, I believe we have a hidden gem among us tonight. Emma froze mid-step, the tray in her hand trembling slightly. She felt the weight of every gaze in the room turned toward her. Richard leaned back in his chair, a self-satisfied smirk spreading across his face. Our dear Emma here, he continued, has the look of someone who's been hiding something from us. A dreamer, I bet. Tell me, Emma, what is it you aspire to? Surely, it's not just serving tables, is it? Laughter rippled through his entourage, and a few patrons exchanged uneasy glances. The tension in the room was palpable. Emma's cheeks burned, but she kept her expression neutral, gripping the tray tightly to steady her nerves. I'm just here to do my job, sir, she replied politely, her voice steady despite the lump forming in her throat. But Richard wasn't done. He gestured grandly toward the corner of the room, where the sleek grand piano gleamed under the warm lights. Come now, Emma, he said, his tone dripping with mockery. Surely you've imagined yourself sitting there, fingers dancing over the keys, enchanting us all with your hidden talent. The room went silent. All eyes were on Emma, who felt the walls closing in. She wanted to disappear, to retreat to the safety of the kitchen, but something in her stirred, a flicker of defiance. Don't be shy, Richard pressed, leaning forward with a glint of mischief in his eyes. Prove me wrong. Show us you're more than just a waitress. The humiliation was almost too much to bear. Emma hesitated, her mind racing. Then, her mother's voice echoed in her memory, never let anyone make you small. You are more than what they see. She took a deep breath, setting the tray down on a nearby table. The movement was quiet but deliberate. Straightening her posture, Emma looked Richard in the eye, her expression no longer uncertain. I'll do it, she said firmly, her voice cutting through the tense silence. A murmur spread through the room, surprise evident on every face. Even Richard seemed momentarily caught off guard, though he quickly recovered with a smug grin. Excellent, he said, clapping his hands together. Let's see what you've got, Emma. With her heart pounding, Emma walked toward the piano, feeling every step like a climb up a steep mountain. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her, but something stronger was rising within her, courage. As she reached the piano, she took another deep breath, her fingers hovering over the keys. This wasn't just about proving Richard wrong. It was about proving something to herself, that no one, no matter how powerful or arrogant, could take her dignity away. Emma walked toward the grand piano, each step carrying the weight of judgment from every pair of eyes fixed upon her. The murmurs of the room faded into a tense silence. The gleaming surface of the piano seemed almost to mock her as she approached, its polished black keys a reminder of everything she had worked for and everything she had yet to achieve. Her fingers hovered above the keys for a brief moment, a fleeting hesitation in her chest. She could hear her heartbeat in her ears, louder than the clinking glasses and whispers around her. The weight of Richard's challenge loomed, but it was no longer about proving him wrong. This was her moment. She closed her eyes for a fraction of a second, took a steadying breath, and then, slowly, placed her fingers on the keys. The first notes of Clair de Lune by Debussy filled the room, soft and delicate, like the first stirrings of dawn. Emma's hands moved gracefully, drawing out each note with a tenderness that seemed to speak directly to the soul. With every press of the keys, her heart poured into the music, every sacrifice, every late-night practice on an old keyboard, the dreams deferred, and the silent promise she had made to herself. Her fingers danced across the keys, weaving a melody that was rich with emotion, joy, sadness, longing, hope. The notes flowed effortlessly, as if they had always belonged to her, as if the piano itself had been waiting for her to unlock its secrets. The room, once filled with the sound of clinking glasses and hushed conversations, now stood still. The chatter had stopped. No one moved. The diners were spellbound, caught in the web of Emma's music. For those few minutes, the world outside the restaurant seemed to disappear. It was just Emma, the piano, and the story she was telling through her fingers. Her eyes were closed now, lost in the music, her body swaying gently with the rhythm. With every passing measure, the doubts that had once clouded her mind began to dissipate. This was who she was meant to be. This was the dream she had clung to for so long, and she was finally, fully living it. As she played, she could feel the transformation in the room. The mocking gazes of the wealthy patrons were replaced by looks of awe. The tension that had hung thick in the air evaporated, replaced by the raw, unspoken admiration that swept across the faces of everyone in the bistro. The diners sat on the edge of their seats, their attention no longer on the frivolous conversations or expensive wine, but solely on the woman at the piano. Even Richard Blackwood, who had initially sneered at her, was no longer laughing. His arms, which had been folded arrogantly across his chest, slowly dropped to his sides as the music swirled around him. His gaze, once dismissive, was now fixed on Emma with something close to respect, maybe even awe. The smile that had once been a sign of his superiority had vanished, replaced by the humbled look of a man who had just witnessed something far beyond his understanding. As the final notes of Clair de Lune echoed through the room, Emma's fingers lingered on the keys for a moment longer, as if to savor the last whisper of the melody. The bistro fell silent, every person in the room holding their breath. And then, as if on cue, the silence broke into a soft, collective exhale. The applause came slowly at first, tentative, as if unsure of what they had just experienced. But soon, it grew louder, more insistent, as the diners stood to their feet, clapping with genuine appreciation. Emma's heart raced, but there was a smile on her lips, a small, quiet triumph that only she could understand. She had done it. Not for them, but for herself. Across the room, Richard Blackwood remained seated, his expression a mixture of surprise and humility. The arrogance had drained from his face, replaced by the stark realization that sometimes, the people you least expect can teach you the greatest lessons. Emma stood up from the piano, taking a deep breath, her hand still trembling slightly. She had won. But it wasn't just the applause she cared about. It was the quiet victory of knowing that, in this moment, she had silenced every doubt, both from others and from within herself. As the last note of Emma's performance hung in the air, the room erupted into applause. It was as if the bistro had collectively exhaled, finally freed from the tension that had filled it moments before. Diners who had once looked down upon her were now on their feet, clapping with such enthusiasm that the sound echoed through the restaurant. The applause was not just for the performance, it was for the undeniable talent, the courage, and the strength Emma had shown in the face of mockery. Her colleagues, who had watched the entire scene unfold from the sidelines, rushed to the piano with grins on their faces. They cheered her on with loud cheers and high fives, their admiration for Emma now evident in every look. They had always known there was something special about her, but now the entire room had witnessed it. Even the manager, who had always been so professional and stoic, couldn't hide a smile of pride. But as the clapping slowly began to fade, Emma found herself looking across the room at Richard Blackwood, still seated at his table. The confident businessman who had once made her the subject of ridicule now appeared different. His once smug expression was gone, replaced by a look of humility. There was a long moment of silence, as if the entire restaurant was waiting for the next move. Then, Richard stood up and began making his way toward Emma. His footsteps were slow, deliberate, and heavy with the weight of what had just transpired. The eyes of the room followed his every move. As he reached her, he paused, gathering his thoughts. "Emma," Richard began, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. I owe you an apology. What I did back there, mocking you, doubting your talent, I was wrong. You showed me something tonight that I will never forget. Emma stood there, unsure of how to respond, but she could see the sincerity in his eyes. The arrogance, once so evident in his every gesture, was now replaced with something far more genuine. Richard continued, I can't take back what I said or did. But I want to help you. I want to offer you the opportunity one denied you earlier. I will sponsor your enrollment at a prestigious music academy, one where you can truly hone your gift. The offer hung in the air for a moment. Emma's heart raced, the weight of his words sinking in. She had never expected this. She had never expected him to admit his wrongs, let alone make such a generous offer. She looked at him, searching his face for any sign of insincerity. But all she saw was respect, genuine respect for the talent she had shown, the bravery she had displayed, and the woman she had become in the process. With a slow smile, Emma nodded. Thank you, Richard. I'll think about it. And in that moment, she knew that she had not only found her voice, but she had found the courage to rise above every doubt and challenge. And, maybe, just maybe, she had found an unlikely ally in the process. As Emma sat back in the quiet of the bistro, she couldn't help but reflect on how one single moment had forever changed her life. That moment of courage, when she walked up to the grand piano despite her fears, had shifted the course of her future. She had once believed that her dreams were out of reach, too big for a waitress in a small Atlanta restaurant. But now, she saw the truth. With determination, she could break any barrier. She realized that it wasn't just about the music. It was about proving to herself, and to others, that no stereotype, no assumption about her based on her job or her background, could define her. She had shattered expectations with every note she played that night. Emma knew her journey had only just begun. And every step from here would be a testament to the power of breaking free from the chains of prejudice and doubt. As for Richard Blackwood, Emma's courage had sparked a transformation in him. No longer was he the arrogant businessman who dismissed others. Inspired by Emma, he began using his influence to support underprivileged talents, providing opportunities to those who had been overlooked. Richard's shift from mocker to mentor wasn't just a personal change, it was a ripple effect that would spread through his network and beyond. The takeaway? Talent should always be recognized over privilege. Respect, not arrogance, is what truly defines a person's worth. Breaking free from the cycle of prejudice is something we all have the power to do, one courageous act at a time. Emma's future was brighter than ever. She accepted Richard's offer and enrolled in the prestigious music academy. There, she not only honed her skills but also grew as an artist, learning from some of the world's best musicians. Her dream was no longer just a fantasy, it was becoming her reality. But Emma's success wasn't only about the recognition of her talent. It was about inspiring others who might feel like they don't belong. Emma became a beacon of hope for those who needed to believe that their dreams were possible too. Her story didn't end with her music. Emma continued to speak out, to share her journey with those who needed it most. She would often visit schools, speak to young students, and tell them how she had faced ridicule but never let it stop her. Emma was now the living proof that perseverance, talent, and courage could change everything. To the audience, Emma's story serves as a reminder to stand up against discrimination. No matter where you come from, or what others may think of you, believe in your talents. You have the power to break stereotypes and overcome any challenge. Just like Emma, you too can turn your dreams into reality. If Emma's story inspired you, share it with others. Let's spread positivity, break the cycles of prejudice, and remind everyone that talent, heart, and hard work can defy any barrier.